People can vote however they'd like, I say, including not voting. But I think it would behoove liberty-minded folks to vote in this binary referendum on which side of U.S. politics wants to take away our right to a voice. I want to be able to see your nihilistic satire on social media. And of course, as we have learned in 2019, these were prescient words, because I am losing slowly, maybe quickly at this point, my ability to see your nihilistic satire on social media. Notably, if you run at AOC Press, which was removed from Twitter for being too good satire of AOC. It was so good, this comedy, that people couldn't even tell the difference between the elected official and the satire. So once something becomes so effective, once something becomes so persuasive, and somebody becomes so charismatic, it becomes virtually illegal for them to exist. They have to be regulated. It's too funny. It's too good that it's just disrupting, apparently. I guess it's disrupting people's thought processes when it comes to politics. But I'm like, if you can't look a layer deeper, I always say do your research. I say if you can't look a single layer deeper and realize that the account says right in there, parody account, you're required by the terms of service of Twitter to put parody in your profile if you're a parody account. And they did that. And yet, still gone. Censorship kills. Censorship kills. Free speech should rule the day. Okay? Because once voices are removed, systematically, one by one, doesn't matter who they are, what ideology they are, what party they support, what politics they support, what their philosophy might be, as the voices are removed, your advocacy drops. Okay? People aren't there to defend you. So if you're pointing at censorship, if you're a disciple of the modern religion, that is censorship. And you're pointing and saying, yes, I would like you to remove that person. Why? Moralism. Sure. Because modern religion is about finding real-world moralism through different means and different ideologies that are a combination of faith and reason. See, I like to stay on the side of reason, so I'm agnostic. That means that I follow the scientific method and I don't try to get too bogged down in absolutes. Okay? Now, some might say that I'm a bit of a postmodernist because I'm like, oh, you know, as human beings view it, reality is subjective. Okay. You know, obviously there is a form of objective reality to our perception, but largely somebody can look at satire and not know that it's comedy. They can think that it's real. It's like Scott Adams says, 2 movies on one screen. And so what is a joke to one person, and of course Scott Adams also says that only 2/3 of people have a sense of humor and 1/3 of people don't. So that also throws a little bit of a problem in the mix. But many people will look at satire and just not get it. They won't get the sarcasm. They won't get the comedy. And that's not their fault. It's just really good satire. Like that's what it is. So is a tweet called Censorship Phases. This is a pretty important tweet right now at this point in the time of internet culture where we are seeing all kinds of people. It's not about hate speech, which is subjective if it exists at all, but it is about largely ideology. Because if you can have Holocaust deniers, which is kind of the gold standard for people that you like, should we ban them? Should we ban them? Is this really dangerous speech? Is this really offensive if we're denying the Holocaust? If they're allowing Holocaust deniers, there aren't that many survivors, unfortunately. It's 75 years now. But if they're allowing Holocaust deniers on social media, but peaceful ideologies like Paul Joseph Watson's are no longer allowed, I don't understand the logic except to say it's about political ideology. And it's about silencing the larger voices. Okay, because I have family members that have said things on social media that would make Alex Jones blush. But they're still on there. They're still on it. It's not about the terms of service, is it? No. Not at all, Kuckerberg. It's about ideology. It's about what their corporate masters and their political alliances want. Censorship phases. First, the self-censorship phase. We're all familiar with this. They suggest you don't speak, or tell you not to speak. So you can make the choice yourself. If you don't want to speak, it might not be the right time, it might not be the right place, you might not have the right words. So I'm not really talking necessarily about just not speaking by choice. Okay? Censoring yourself, sure, you could call that self-censorship. But what I'm referring to is when others are asking you to do it and saying, don't speak. They tell you not to speak. They may say you're not qualified to speak. Institutions being a modern religion, sometimes they'll say, only the experts are allowed to speak. Only the academics, only the subject matter experts are allowed. So they'll use all kinds of mechanisms to make sure that your voice isn't heard, because, for whatever reason, it may harm their objective. What their objective is changes, and it's very contextual. But in the case of social media, it's pretty clear that when you're having a political debate, it makes it a lot easier to make a questionable argument when there's nobody there to fight back. And you create this echo chamber that is anti-information, that sticks to a script, and essentially becomes a simulation. A micro simulation or a macro simulation of what reality actually is. Almost like a video game or a TV show. You know who the good guys are and then you know who the bad guys are, and there's no question. That's the kind of environment they're looking to create when they ask you to censor yourself. Don't tell the truth as you see it. Stick to what the prophets of modern religion say. The media, state, and of course the academics that are the ones that started a couple of these freaking ideologies in the first place. So the second stage after the self-censorship phase, the second phase is passive censorship. So they tell others you shouldn't speak. They spread the word. They smear it around that you shouldn't listen to that person. Why? Well, they'll use an ad hominem attack. Why shouldn't you listen to them? Well, they eat babies. Or maybe they are a misogynist. Or they're a racist. They're a sexist. They don't respect old people. They'll point all these things to you. They'll call you a malevolent otherist. They'll say that you don't recycle, so you're disobeying the prophets of the global warming modern religion. They'll do all sorts of things. They'll try to find ways to discredit you so that when other people, they'll tell other people, and when the other people look at you, their framing, their first impression is a whole lot different. If they look at you and listen to you in the first place, which they might not. They've been turned off already. They've heard from a credible voice in their circle that you aren't credible. That you are a sophist or you're something negative that they don't like. So why waste time? Why, if time is the currency, which it always is, why even spend my time listening to this person? Why even test my cognitive dissonance and my confirmation bias? Why would I exercise my cognitive dissonance and make myself struggle to believe something that is already outside of my belief system that I've already cast aside? I've been told. Why would I ever listen to a misogynist or somebody that looks down on poor people? Or somebody that hates rich people, because that's equally bad. You know, we're learning in this country. We've been learning through the rhetoric of the democratic socialists and others that rich people are bad. But the rich people employ the lower classes, the middle class and the lower class, in terms of income. They employ them. They give them benefits. You know, in a capitalistic system, and unless you really want to get into socialism and take away property rights, which we're not doing in this country, we have a capitalistic system. It's a myth that, you know, Bernie Sanders really wants socialism for real. He just wants to sprinkle some social programs on top of a capitalistic structure. Just at a level that, well, some people don't agree with. Finally, after the first censorship phase, self-censorship, and the second censorship phase, passive censorship, you have the third and final censorship phase, and this is the end game for the modern religion that is censorship. Active censorship. You're fully silenced. You're removed. Your voice suppressed. You're gone, man. Game over, man. Game over. Game over, man. You're out. Nobody hears from you. Now, of course, in this age of social media, deplatforming, depersoning, and of course the companies also doing things such as debanking, and of course demonetizing videos and content that they don't like, that their advertisers don't like. Now again, I support the rights of private companies to a degree. You know, of course advertisers can choose who they want. It's not like I want too much regulation on that aspect. But we are seeing a pattern, notably in the case of Gab in 2018, when one user committed a heinous crime, the Pittsburgh massacre at the synagogue, the Tree of Life shooting, and then a 1 million user website was essentially blacklisted from the entire internet. Web providers, they were blacklisted from being platformed by the web provider, but also by being financially platformed, being funded just for being an avenue, an alternative for those that want free speech, which was being tested by the censorious nature of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They'd say, well, it's a free market. That's an argument you'll hear from those that say, private company. When they're trying to defend censorship, they'll say, free markets. Well, the free market is Gab and Minds and BitChute and other alternative tech platforms. But if those platforms are not allowed to exist, if the entire system gangs up and says, well, you can't be on Facebook and we're going to kick these other sites offline, and thankfully they haven't been kicked offline, but Gab tested that theory, that's not a free market, that's a monopoly. Okay, so get your facts straight on that part. Okay, regardless of the free speech implications, which of course I support nigh absolute free speech, okay, except for credible threats, illegal pornography, incitement, defamation, slander, libel, doxing, and a few other cases that are clearly dangerous or anti-humanist. Okay? Other than that, I support as wide a conversation as possible, online and off. Okay? So that's what I think we should do. I think we need an Internet Bill of Rights. I say this virtually every video now. We need an Internet Bill of Rights, but because we're not going to find solutions to our new problems with old laws. Well, maybe we will. If we interpret the First Amendment, which was not prescient enough to know about the internet 200 years out, if we interpret that and we look at that and say, look, you can't be a platform and a publisher at the same time. You can't have curation rights and also be a public utility for public officials such as President Trump at the same time. And generally, since the Enlightenment of the 19th century, I think we should be erring on the side of free speech and not always turning to the modern religion that is censorship to get all of our moral virtue and our absolute truth. Because truth doesn't come from censorship. It comes from speech. It comes from sharing information and coming to new conclusions together. So, 2 more tweets for you. Did some Beto bashing in these tweets, but there's a full video about that on my channel, Tweet Beto O'Rourke and the 2020 election. Check that out, where I just spend about half an hour doing some Beto bashing, Beto blocking, and I use my term for Beto, which is beta, quite often. So, if you are not triggered by a lot of, I guess, satire and negativity about beta, check that video out.